My Lords, perhaps I could speak to Amendment 40, first of all, concerning the British Transport Police and the name of the noble Baroness Lady Pigeon. And may I associate myself with everything she has said about the importance of the British Transport Police in maintaining safety and law on the railway network, and indeed promoting a sense of safety, which is almost as important. And I would say that is particularly true, if I may say this, for women who are travelling on the railways, or those perhaps travelling on their own. If they do not feel safe, they won't travel on the railways. It's as simple as that. And the British Transport Police have an important role to play in that regard. Fortunately, there is generally a good record of personal safety on the railways, but we want to see how this bill is going to enhance it. And the fact is, and my figures may be terribly out of date, but certainly when I was last involved, half of the funding the British Transport Police received came from Transport for London for services in London, and the rest of that was spread throughout the rest of the country. That's because the railway companies were not procuring, well, I won't say they weren't procuring enough British Transport Police to do the job, because the test of that, of course, is whether there is criminality on the system. But they weren't procuring at the same rate, if you like, of coverage that Transport for London was procuring at. And this is an opportunity for the government to say, as it takes control of the companies, how they are going to ramp that up and what investment they're going to make in it. So I hope to hear from the noble Lord the Minister on that point. But a very interesting constitutional point was also raised by the noble Baroness Lady Pigeon, which I hadn't heard thought of in any way before, which is how is the British Transport Police Authority to be constituted, if at the moment it's constituted in large measure through having representatives of the train operating companies. If there is only one effectively train operating company, which is the government, how is it going to be constituted? Are we, as she says, it operates out of the Department for Transport. Is the Department for Transport going to become the first government department in this country, I think that's correct, to have its own police force? Because even the Home Office, out of which ordinary policing operates, it doesn't have its own police force. They are all accountable to police authorities, or to elected police and crime commissioners in appropriate areas, or to the Mayor of London in his capacity in London, and so forth. And could we end up with a constitutional nightmare here and a car crash which the government hasn't properly thought through as a result of this proposal to nationalise all these railways? I'd be interested to hear what the noble Lord the Minister has to say. Turning now to freight, I share the concern of the noble Baroness Lady Randerson at expressing two definite opinions on this topic, especially in the presence of the noble Lords, Lord Berkeley and Bradshaw, who have such very considerable and long-term prior knowledge of it. I do have some slight sympathy with the government on the point, because I understand, I may be wrong about this, that there are freight companies which have rights to paths which they do not use, but will not relinquish because they may be useful in the future, and why should they relinquish them? While at the same time there are other paths they might want to have access to which they can't get hold of, and this is slightly a mess. So perhaps there is some work for the government to do here to sort this out. But there is, as I understand it, also a rail freight growth target which the previous government had, and that is to increase rail freight by 75% by 2050. And so far that hasn't been mentioned, and there's no, we have not heard yet whether the new government wishes to commit itself to that target. Again, there is an opportunity when the noble Lord the Minister gets to his feet for him to do that and to say that is his target. We would like to hear more about that. But the point I really want to come to is that while he may want to say that some of those points can be addressed in the future bill, the bill that we're promised, the bill further down the road, he cannot say that of the points raised by my noble friend Lord Young of Cookham and the noble Lord Berkeley, both of whom made the point that the way in which this is now proceeding, by contrast with the Williams report, The way in which this is now proceeding creates a fundamental and ineradicable conflict of interest in Great British Railways' role. That is, when it was the body, the great controlling brain, as I've referred to it, which was going to establish who could run what railway services where, and where appropriate, award franchises, that is, or concessions, that is, for passenger railway services, while also allowing open access and also allowing freight services to take place, then it could do that from a disinterested position, because it was allocating resource, presumably, according to some sort of rational principle which could be explained and interrogated by interested members of the public and by other parties who had a stake in the matter. But now, of course, it is always going to be the case that Great British Railways will also be the operator of the passenger services. So where do the other services, where does the open access, and where, as far as this group of amendments is concerned most particularly, where does freight get a look in? How does it make its case? And to whom does it appeal if it feels it is unjustly done by? Is it only to the courts that it is to be allowed to appeal, or could there be a truly independent body to which, outside Great British Railways, perhaps the Office of Rail and Road, I don't know, to which appeals can be made, which will decide and allocate these constrained paths, where they are constrained, on a rational basis? We have no idea about this, because this bill, as I've said earlier, is being rushed through for manifesto reasons, for publicity reasons, for headline reasons, fundamentally, without these crucial questions that it throws up, and which are not my questions. I didn't put these amendments down. These are coming from benches on all sides of the House. These questions are being thrown up, and the government has no answer except the tune we're getting accustomed to, which has as its first verse, it's in the manifesto, and its second verse, we'll tell you when we get to it sometime next year. So I hope we can do better than that when the noble Lord the Minister gets to his feet.